Good morning. AV crew, am I on? I am on. Whether you are here in person this morning or watching at home, it is good to be with you this morning. It is good for all of us to be together. In the Hebrew Bible, also known as the Old Testament, there is the book of Psalms. Many of the early Psalms deal with laments. They speak of the harsh, inescapable realities of human life. They are honest about how hard life is sometimes. They sometimes even seem bleak. No one could ever accuse the writers of the Psalms of toxic positivity. But the latter Psalms are more focused on praise and celebration. The message that I take away from the Psalms, which is, I think, an especially important one these days, is this. The message is that it is not important that, the message is that it is important not to pretend that the harsh realities of life do not exist, but despite its many limitations, to affirm that life is still good and worthy of praise and celebration. There are 150 psalms in total, and the very last line of the very last psalm is Kol Haneshama Tehalal Yah, or let everything that breathes praise God. Our musicians this morning will soon sing a piece based on this last line, and as they do, I invite you to reflect, despite so many limitations, how are all the ways that our lives and our world still good and still so worthy of praise and celebration? Come, my friends, with our hearts open to both the challenges and the possibilities that this new day and this new week bring, with our hearts open to all that inspires, sustains, redeems, and transforms us. Come, let us worship together.
Let everything that has breath praise God. The flaming chalice is a symbol of the Unitarian Universalist tradition, the liberal religious tradition to which this congregation belongs. Will those of you here in person please stand as you are able for our chalice lighting? And for those who are watching from home, if you have a chalice there, I invite you to light it with me at this time. As we kindle this flame, we recommit ourselves to nurturing the spirits of one another and the common good of the world we share. May the light of this flame be welcoming to all. Seek a liberal religious home. For those of you already standing, I invite you to remain standing for our opening hymn, which is number 83, Winds Be Still.
Hi, my name is Jason Sikoski, and I am glad to be serving as part of your worship team this morning. Whether you're a first-time visitor or a long-time member, I'd like to offer you a special welcome. Here at the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Raleigh, we are intentionally inclusive, liberally religious, and actively serving the common good of our shared world. Whoever you are and wherever you are on your own religious journey, you are welcome here. If you're visiting us for the first time in person, I invite you to stop by the welcome stand in the foyer if you haven't done so already. You can fill out our visitor form, get a name tag, and pick up one of our Guide to UUFR to find out more about UUFR and Unitarian Universalism. If you're visiting online, I invite you to fill out our visitor form. When you do this, you'll start receiving our weekly e-newsletter. This morning, Eleanor Goodwin, one of our lay ministers, will be available in the right front corner of the sanctuary after the service to talk with anyone who might be experiencing any difficult circumstances in their lives and would like to talk with somebody. I hope all of you will read through the chalice you received by email this Friday about everything happening here around UUFR, or check out the upcoming events section of our website. Now we have a short special announcement from Jory Holst about Crop Walk.
Hello. I'm Jory. My family and I have been members of UUFR for almost 3 years now, and I wanted to talk a little bit about the Crop Walk. The Crop Walk is an annual interfaith walk through downtown Raleigh that raises money for people who need food around the world. I have been going for 2 years, and each year I have enjoyed meeting someone new. It is a fabulous way to bring together our Triangle community, contribute to a good cause, and get some much-needed exercise. But it is missing one thing: all of you, especially you youngsters in the back. Last year, I was one of the only teenagers from UUFR there, and that made me really sad. And we were definitely not the biggest group. Kudos to the Giants, though. If at least 3 teenagers other than I come this time around, I will be eternally grateful. It will be taking place on Sunday, October 27th, which is 2 weeks from now, at the First Baptist Church on 99 North Salisbury Street. Let's add the U to UU. Come to the crop walk. See you there.
Well said. Thanks, Jory. Our in-person social hour this morning will be downstairs in Founders Hall. I now invite you to meet and greet your neighbor.
I invite you to come back together, continue your conversations during coffee hour. This past Friday, October 11th, was National Coming Out Day. This morning, Gwen Kelly will speak to us more about it.
I don't know what's happening here. Good morning. So, my name is Gwendolyn Kelly. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm here to speak on National Coming Out Day. I am a transgender woman, and I can proudly say this because I struggled for years to find any of the right words that could explain what I was feeling. I spent several years trying to ignore it. I spent a few years misdiagnosing it. And after decades of struggling, I got to a point where I finally had the words to explain what I was feeling: transgender. Then came the need to justify it to myself. You see, I had to argue with myself that there was no other explanation. I spent hours arguing that the changes that I would be accepting were worth the societal issues that I would face. And one of my biggest hurdles was the aching fear that my loved ones wouldn't understand or accept me. I had deep existential dread that if I told my family, they would begin to question me. And so I spent weeks writing a laundry list of signs from when I was a kid and doing debate practices in the mirror, all to explain that my understanding of myself wasn't some haphazard decision and that it needed to be respected. I spent so much time preparing for that when the time came out, I forgot one of the most important rules. You don't need to come out to everyone at the same time. But in a flurry of phone calls on Father's Day, I called every single person in my life. I called friends, siblings, cousins, my mother, and my father. Every phone call went about the same way. There was a hard swallow of my fears before pressing send, reciting the same talking points and beating around the bush for a few minutes before ultimately blurting it out clumsily. And you'd begin to think that after the 6th call, I'd have gained some level of expertise, but I had become so overwhelmed with anxiety and the fear of rejection that I wasn't even aware of the words that were coming out of my mouth. Every time, luckily, I was overjoyed to find that the person on the other line was respectful and supportive. Every person that I reached out to reacted to my assertion with love, and I was truly lucky to be surrounded by people that accepted me. They gave me the encouragement and support that I desperately needed in those early and difficult months. But sadly, not everybody is that lucky. National Coming Out Day has been celebrated every October 11th since 1988 with the goal of supporting people going through that process of self-discovery. This day is for recognizing the work that goes into someone understanding themselves and building safe spaces for them to explore that identity. National Coming Out Day is about recognizing that transphobia and homophobia thrive in both ignorance and silence, and about understanding that love and support are the single most important things you can offer to somebody coming out to you. If you are an ally, the best thing that you can do is listen to your loved ones with respect and without judgment. It is critical that when someone tells you how they are feeling, that you can listen to them without shutting them down. And if someone does come to you, know that they are doing so with a lot of anxiety. Even if they know that you love them and that you're accepting, there is always the fear of what if they're not going to be with me? They need to hear that you appreciate them and you appreciate the trust that they are giving you. They need you to reassure them that you are here for them. It's very important to keep in mind that if somebody does come out to you, you need to be able to respect their privacy. Coming out is their information to share. Do not pressure them to out themselves, and do not tell people behind their back. And ultimately, most importantly, if you are someone who's coming to grips with that understanding that you are LGBTQIA+, and struggling with the weight of that knowledge, please just remember 3 things. You can take this at your own pace, and you only need to do what you're comfortable with. It does get better, and you are and you will always be loved. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gwen. Now is the time in our service when we acknowledge some of the joys and sorrows of our community. We do this because we believe a joy shared is a joy made greater, and a sorrow shared is made easier to bear. Anyone is invited to fill out our joys and sorrows area of our front page of our website. There's a form there, or in the chalice by midnight on the Saturday preceding Sunday service. Anyone may also light a candle before the service, and if they wish, fill out one of our cards by hand so their joy or sorrow can be shared with the congregation. Linda Alexander shares that Abby Kurtz, a longtime former active member, died on September 7th. She will be sorely missed by all who knew her. Dana Lundquist, our family ministry director, shares that her father-in-law, George Swager, is in the ICU on life support, and her family has decided to transition him to hospice. He is expected to complete his life within the next week. David Portori shares a sorrow that Jamie Reed, the mother of his children, Zane and Isabella, is approaching the end of her time in hospice for dementia and other illnesses. He asks that you hold all of them in your prayers. Allison Branch would appreciate uplifting thoughts and or prayers for her daughter Cameron, who has been hospitalized this week. She is worried and also exceptionally hopeful. Nancy and Bob Moxley asks that you hold their daughter Amy in your hearts. as she lives in Asheville and has been facing many hurricane-related issues. May we hold in our hearts all those affected by Hurricane Milton, as we also remember those affected by other recent extreme weather events. Yom Kippur, one of the Jewish high holy days, ended last night. For all among us here, as well as our Jewish siblings in the larger community, may we lift up our hopes that you had a meaningful fast. May you be sealed in the book of life. National Coming Out Day happened on Friday. For all among us here in the LGBTQI+ community who have come out to their communities, are in the process of coming out, or have not yet come out, may you feel seen. May you feel heard and loved for your full and beautiful selves. Reverend James shares his joy that his mother turned 86 on Thursday, and then the following day had open heart surgery to replace one leaky heart valve and repair another. He's very thankful she is recovering well. Tomorrow is Greg McNeil's birthday. Let's show him some love. Anonymous. As we hold these shared joys and sorrows in our hearts and reflect on the joys, sorrows, fears, and hopes of our own lives, let's be together in stillness and in silence, opening ourselves up to that spirit within us and amidst us, called by many names, but known to every human heart, that leads us to a fuller, deeper, richer experience of life. After this silence, we'll sing hymn 1010, We Give Thanks. But for now, let us be together in stillness and silence.
Hi, Jerry Meister of the 75th Anniversary Committee, she, her. I'm happy to stand before you today to announce an incredible gift to UUFR in commemoration of our 75th anniversary. After 2 years in the making, Creative Threads is proud to announce their gift of 9 beautiful quilts to celebrate our anniversary. These quilts will hang in our sanctuary for all of us to enjoy, as well as future generations to enjoy and learn from. Creative Threads members, Jan Vital, Pat Clark, and Becky Elliott, are all gifted fiber artists, and each one agreed to create and make 3 of the 9 quilts. Fran Wise was consulted with design consistency and color, and she made the plaque, as well as Fran designed our 75th anniversary logo. So we're grateful to Fran and Jan, who are attending virtually this service. Jan is ill and not able to be with us, so we send healing wishes to you, Jan, and we're so sorry you aren't here with us to celebrate in person. The themes that they chose, are UUFR history, worship, music, environment, justice, caring, family ministry, outreach, and UUFR future. Becky, Pat, and Jan, your artistry, skill, and donated time and materials have created an amazing tribute to our first 75 years. We are deeply grateful. Congregation, if you contributed ideas about the themes or your signature or thumbprint for the quilt backs, we thank you. And today you're invited to stay after this service to look at the quilts up close and ask your questions and give your thanks to our quilt makers. Pat and Becky, will you please stand as we give you a round of applause for these fantastic quilts? Yes. We appreciate your generosity, and someone asked me, what are they going to do now that they have their lives back? So thank you.
Good morning. My name is Kathy Field, and my pronouns are she, her, and I'm a member of your board of directors. I will be downstairs at social hour after the worship service if you have any questions or you'd like to ask about the board or talk about any concerns you may have. Everything we do at UUFR is only possible because of the generous financial support that so many of us provide. If you would like to make a contribution this morning, we invite you to bring it forward and put it in one of our offering plates. If you would prefer to have an usher come to you, please raise your hand. You may also give using one of the methods on our screen. Our offering will now be given and gratefully received.
The Four Agreements is a book by Don Miguel Ruiz that contains ancient indigenous wisdom from the Toltec natives of southern Mexico. The Toltecs are people of knowledge who explore and conserve the traditional spiritual knowledge and practices of their ancestors. The Four Agreements, Ruiz says, are: be impeccable with your word, do not take anything personally, do not make assumptions, and always do your best. Several months ago, many people at UUFR read the Four Agreements. In a moment, two of them will offer reflections on this book. But here's an excerpt from the book on why they are important. What you're seeing and hearing right now is nothing but a dream. You're dreaming right now in this moment. You're dreaming with the brain awake. Before we were born, the humans before us created a big outside dream that we will call society's dream, or the dream of the planet. The dream of the planet includes all of society's rules, its beliefs, its laws, its religions, different cultures and ways to be, its governments, schools, social events, and holidays. The outside dream has so many rules that when a new human is born, we hook the child's attention and introduce these rules into his or her mind. As children, we didn't have the opportunity to choose our beliefs, but we agreed with the information that was passed to us from the dream of the planet via other humans. I call this process the domestication of humans. We trust what we believe, and our beliefs set us up for suffering. In the dream of our planet, it's normal for humans to suffer, to live in fear, and to create emotional dramas. Our personal dream can also become an ongoing nightmare, where we suffer and live in a state of fear. But we don't need to dream a nightmare. It's possible to enjoy a pleasant dream. There are thousands of agreements you have made with yourself, with other people, with God, with society, with your parents, with your spouse, with your children. But the most important agreements are the ones you've made with yourself. In these agreements, you tell yourself who you are, what you feel, what you believe, and how to behave. Any one of these agreements is not a problem, but all of these many agreements make us suffer, make us fail in life. If you want to live a life of joy and fulfillment, you have to find the courage to break those agreements that are fear-based and claim your personal power. When we're finally ready to change those agreements, there are 4 very powerful agreements that will help us break those agreements that came from fear and deplete our energy. You need a very strong will in order to adapt the 4 agreements. But if you can begin to live your life with these agreements, the transformation in your life will be amazing.
Good morning, everyone. I want to thank Gwen for sharing her story with us. Hearing other people share their stories gives us all a little more bravery to share our own, which is a part of what National Coming Out Day is all about. So here's a little part of mine. I had top surgery 2 years ago. This was after a long and frustrating 2-year battle with insurance companies and the hospital system. I guess if I was an illegal alien prisoner, it would have been a lot easier. After I finally got the surgery, my mother, in what she felt like was coming from a place of care and concern for me, made a comment about how bad the scars were. This is where the third agreement comes in. Don't take anything personally. Don Miguel Ruiz explains that someone's words and actions are a reflection of themselves and are never really about you. He even says that taking things personally is the most selfish thing you can do, because when you take things personally, you assume that everything is about you, but it isn't. This echoes Paulo Coelho's sentiment that how people treat other people is a direct reflection of how they feel about themselves. My mother's comments reflected a deep entanglement with conventional beauty standards and her own self-judgments. Now, you might think this is the part where I blame all of my problems on my parents, but don't worry, we can go further than that. My mother wasn't born hypercritical. We're all shaped by our environment. She grew up in a society that told her her value as a woman, and even her lovability and subsequent housing security depended on her appearance. My mother continues to spend hundreds of dollars on Ozempic, Botox, lip fillers, and other cosmetic procedures. Her comments about my chest were less about me and more about her own wounds. Her attempts to pass on the insecurities that she carries. In her own way, she was sharing her pain. My mother is very generous that way. But was what she said true? Are scars objectively unattractive? Growing up, I heard that scars were manly, so why weren't mine? I began to compare my scars to my tattoos. After all, aren't they both just marks on my body, each telling a story? Our feelings about tattoos have changed over time and across cultures. As tattoos have become destigmatized, more people now view them as attractive. Historically, the stigma around tattoos was used to dehumanize indigenous tribes and justify their oppression and genocide. In a similar way, the disgust some may feel towards scars from transgender surgeries reflects a deeper societal transphobia, an agreement rather than an inherent truth. I've also been studying Kabbalah, a form of Jewish mysticism. Kabbalists believe that the Creator gives us tests to help us grow, shaping us to become more aligned with what they call the light. This concept is mirrored in Western psychology, particularly in the internal family systems, or IFS model, where we're encouraged to use our triggers as trailheads. This means using something upsetting to reflect on what lesson it was meant to teach you. If my mother had told me that my scars made me look like a blue hippo, I probably wouldn't have taken it too personally, because I wouldn't have any invested belief in that statement. My mother's comments touched a wound, which gave me the opportunity to confront my own internalized transphobia and let go of caring so much about others' opinions. The last agreement is to be impeccable with your word. Don Miguel Ruiz says that this is the most important one. When my mother used harsh, critical, and judgmental words, she was not impeccable with her word. But ultimately, this hurts her more than anyone else. The way she speaks to others mirrors how she speaks to herself. Words are incredibly powerful. They shape our perceptions and reinforce our beliefs about the world. By using her words in a negative way, she perpetuates a harsh, critical, and judgmental reality for herself. Growing up, I heard my parents use judgmental words like stupid or asshole against strangers, and I internalized that, assuming that others said the same about me. But as I've silenced my inner critic, I've realized that the world isn't as cold or harsh as I once believed. Being more impeccable with my words, both internally and externally, has transformed my entire worldview. I now know that if someone is being judgmental or critical, that has nothing to do with me, and I hold compassion for these wounded and scared individuals. These agreements have also helped me to become a better ally. Many people take conversations about racism personally, interpreting systemic critiques as attacks on their own character. This often leads to defensiveness, guilt, and ultimately disengagement from meaningful dialogue. However, when we stop taking things personally, we can move beyond guilt and engage more constructively, becoming more effective allies in the fight against systemic inequalities. When we stop being so harsh on ourselves and stop taking things personally, we can show up as better, more compassionate people. Let's close with a short visualization. So close your eyes, and I want you to think of a time when something someone said really upset you, something that you took personally. Do you have it? Now imagine what might have been going on in their life to lead them to say that. Maybe they stepped on a Lego barefoot that morning. But recognize that it had more to do with them than with you. And now imagine letting it go. And then maybe you can reflect on why you took it personally. What wound did they touch? What part of you believed that poison that they spread to you? The 4 agreements changed my life, setting me on a path of deconstructing my limiting beliefs and coming to accept myself. I highly recommend that everyone reads the 4 agreements. It's a very short book, and we all have a lot to learn from ancient indigenous wisdom. Thank you.
When I say revolutionary, y'all say love. Revolutionary? Love. Revolutionary? Love. Revolutionary? Love. Revolutionary? Love. That's all we need. That's all we need is love, y'all. And I know some folks are like, revolutionary? What is he talking about? I'm a liberal. So, so I just want to be clear, right? Evolution is when the world transforms you. Revolution is when you transform the world. Right? So we need our love to transform the world. And I think one of the best ways to do that is actually by having these conversations and reading these books and talking about these books and the impacts they have on us. So I have the 2 agreements, the last 2 agreements, which is, do your best, which is not perfectionism. All right, I know I'm talking to a majority white crowd here, okay? So I know white folks, y'all are the best at being perfect. Right? That's probably why we haven't eliminated racism yet. Right? Because you don't have to be perfect. You just have to try. Right? You just have to do. But then the second one is don't make assumptions. Now, has anyone grew up like me where your parents told you what happens when you make assumptions? Yeah, I see some hands. Right? So maybe y'all could say it for me. When you make assumptions, you make a... So I didn't say that on the podium, just to let y'all know. Y'all said it, all right? It wasn't me, all right, for the record. So I just want to share some words that the author wrote about Don't Make Assumptions. He said, find the courage to ask questions and to express what you really want. Communicate with others as clearly as you can to avoid misunderstandings, sadness, and drama. The third is with just one agreement, with just this one alone, you can completely transform your life. And I just want to speak a little bit of my experience as a racial equity trainer for the Racial Equity Institute, one of the best trainings in the world. Not just saying that because I'm a trainer with them, but they really are phenomenal. But they often say that we all have biases. If you're a human, you have a bias, right? So that means that we all make assumptions. Can we agree with that? We all make assumptions, right? Hopefully some good assumptions, right? Like, wow, that guy is beautiful. Wow, his hair's nice. He got all those rings on, right? He must really care, right? Yeah, thank you for the claps. I appreciate that. But sometimes the assumptions aren't as positive as we want them to be. And you have to give yourself grace for that. But the reality is that it's a mindfulness practice. Right? For those who aren't that aware of mindfulness, it's basically the practice of being aware of what you're thinking, of what you're doing, of what you're saying. Sounds a little draining, right? A little tiresome. Yeah, but it's important, right? And the more you do it, the easier you get at it. So do not make assumptions. One of the things I want to share is I wore this shirt purposefully. It's Down Home, North Carolina. Has anyone ever heard of Down Home, North Carolina? Yeah, thank you. Yes, this is really hard work we're doing in rural North Carolina, right? I'm currently one of the field directors, so I'm constantly training a team of over 200 people all over the state to talk about the election and how to build power, multiracial power for working class people. Yeah. Thank you. And the reason why I'm bringing that up is because assumptions come up in the work, right? Especially when I see a sign in someone's yard that might not be for the candidate that I'm trying to push them towards. And it's easy to say, oh, well, I already know where this person is. I'm going to go to the next house, right? To make assumptions. Personally, speaking for myself, I love going to those houses. I live in Smithfield, North Carolina. Yeah, I hear y'all. Y'all know about Smithfield. Yes. I've been an organizer, a community organizer for over 10 years. And when I moved to Smithfield, I said, oh, this isn't Greensboro. This isn't Charlotte. This isn't Raleigh, right? So I had to join Down Home. I had to find my people. And essentially, what I noticed is that everyone wants to survive, right? Everyone wants to put food on the table. Everybody wants a good education. Everybody wants to find good health care, fair housing, right? But the issues are that people are caught up in personalities over policies, right? So we just have to help them realize that they're trying to survive, right? So when I go knock on that door, I say, hey, how you doing? And I really mean it. Right? I really care about people. And they can see that. They can feel my humanity. So by the time I bring up the electoral process and the candidates, I already connected with them, right? We already got heart to heart. So they might say some things that might be, whoa, right? Some of your assumptions might have been correct, right? But the reality is that we can connect with people on a deeper level and persuade them to realize that it's about survival, right? It's about how do we keep each other safe? How do we make sure that we're not spending an arm and a leg for groceries, and our rent and our house taxes aren't skyrocketing, and right, all these things that really bring people together. Right? This is called deep canvassing. Is anyone familiar with deep canvassing? Yeah, so it's a little different from regular canvassing. You have to be brave. You have to not make assumptions. So that's one of the parts that I want to talk about because it actually works. I've seen a lot of people, even my own personal experience, people have literally, after talking to them, removed that sign off their yard. Like literally got and took their sign off. Because when you realize, they're like, my family just told me to do this. My dad just told me, it's like they don't even realize. It's just part of the nature. But when you actually have those deep conversations, you can move people. And it doesn't just have to be at the doors. Right? It could be at the grocery store. It could be, maybe not this church, but it could be at other churches, right? Other spaces. The second is always do your best. And he talks about it as your best is going to change from moment to moment. It will be different when you are healthy as opposed to sick. Under any circumstance, simply do your best, and you will avoid self-judgment, self-abuse, and regret. Now, as a racial equity trainer, I want to name that I know I am black presenting, right? My father is a black man. My mom, however, is Latin, right? So y'all see my last name? Bermudez, right? My mom's from Costa Rica, the country of peace. They don't have a military. They defunded the military and funded their education system and their healthcare system. We should take notes. So essentially, growing up in a Latinx household there was this thing I couldn't avoid. It's called white supremacy, right? It's called Eurocentric tendencies. And in Latinx cultures, they have this thing called mejor la raza. And it means better the race. And that just means white assimilation, or assimilate to whiteness as much as possible. And I am the darkest one in my family, if I didn't make that clear yet. So when I was around 3 years old, some of the first, and I was speaking Spanish, that was my first language. The first thing I was saying was, yo soy feo. Yes, for those who speak Spanish, you know what I'm saying. Yo soy malo. Right? Those are the first words that I was saying, the first sentences I was saying to people. And for those who aren't, Spanish speakers, it just means I am bad, I am ugly. And I cancel that, right? Cancel. But that's what I was saying for a really long time, for most of my life. In fact, it got me to being 7 and 8, trying to take my own life, right? I really hated the color of my skin. I hated how I showed up in spaces. People always asked me if I was adopted or if I was a friend of my brother, right? Like, people never really thought that I was part of the family. And as I got older, people always told me that, well, if you haven't noticed, I am very hyperactive. Right? I have extreme case of ADHD. So just imagine what I look like at 7, right? At 6, right? So my mom always told me, always do your best. Show up to make sure that people don't label you as bad, right? People don't label you as a troublemaker. Right, and I tried, y'all. I tried so hard until I got to the age where I realized, like, no matter what I do or say, people are going to make assumptions about me. And that's when I realized how important it is to look and think about myself. You do your best for you, not for somebody else. Right? You do it for you. So after many years of therapy, I'm still in therapy. I think we should all be in therapy. Yeah. Right, yes, definitely get into therapy, even if you're a therapist, all right? Therapists need therapy, right? But nonetheless, it's like very important that we understand when we do our best, we don't look back and say, oh, I could've, should've, would've, right? Instead, we can feel better about ourselves. I have a lot of mentors who are probably like double, even triple my age, right? And they say, the only thing I regret is what I didn't do, is what I didn't say, right? And if you tried your best in that moment, you won't regret that. Now, I want us to just radically think about what would it look like if we all tried our very best. I'm an organizer, and I believe everyone can be an organizer. You don't have to be knocking on doors. You don't have to build an organization, right? But you can talk to people about issues and struggles that you all share and figure out, how do we solve these issues? How do we solve these struggles? I was talking to somebody earlier, and they said they're a huge introvert, and they cannot talk to people. And I'm like, that's fine. Write an email, right? Send postcards out. Like, there's so many things that you can do. Right? Because at the end of November 5th, after the date, are we going to look back and say, well, I did try everything I could. I really did everything I possibly can, right? Because that's what's really important is that you can live with yourself after the fact. So in closing, I just want folks to understand that even being labeled as a hyperactive, bad child or whatever, I now am like a full-fledged organizer, right? So some people might consider me still a troublemaker. But in the words of John Lewis, I'm a good troublemaker, right? So I just want everyone to really just close their eyes, take a deep inhale, and I want you to exhale any stress and anxiety, anything that doesn't serve you. And as you still have your eyes closed, I want you to think about what your skill set is, what your role is, what you have a passion for, and how you can utilize that to make this world a better place. When you're ready, open your eyes. Maybe write that down. Maybe tell your neighbor. Right? Because we really want you to lock that in, All right? We really want us to all realize that we're the change you've been waiting for. All right? All right? Revolutionary love. Revolutionary? 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 Thank you.
Thank you, Adon. Thank you, Micah. Powerful message. I invite you to stand as you are able for our closing hymn, which will be 1053, How Could Anyone? As we end this time of worship together, may we do so with ever more love for one another, with ever more gratitude for this precious gift of life we share this very day, with ever more peace in our hearts and with ever more hope in our own lives and this world we share. Amen.
Phone